Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, November 27th, 2025, Thanksgiving Day. We're doing it live here at Kagro in the Morning World headquarters, and not at Dem from Connecticut in the world in the morning headquarters. It's a busy day for everybody, and Greg and I spoke about it yesterday, and he's just got too much going on. In fact, I've got too much going on, but I've got so much going on that I can't afford not to do a show. Does that make any sense to you? Whereas Greg can. And look, hey man, I appreciate his being able to come on yesterday. A lot of people are traveling. A lot of people are spending the day baking for their dessert tables. That's what was going on here yesterday. The turkey's going in. I've moved world headquarters. I guess I've raised it about 12 or 15 feet, moving it up a floor, which will cut down on the background noise from the kitchen, which is good because everybody's self-conscious about it. Plus, guests will begin to arrive, and they may mill around in the background a little bit. And so I'm trading that for bird noise, essentially. I'm no closer to the window, but I guess I'm up higher in the tree, or the tree that's next to the house. I'm not actually in the tree, as it turns out, but it will sound like I will. So we may interview a few birds during today's program, which is fine, because it's always good to get the bird's eye view of these, many stories. I have, in fact, managed to record a show for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll be away from the microphone. I can't even fake it tomorrow. But I did record an all-new program, and you will be pleased or distraught to know that the vast majority of it is trying to, what shall we say, unwind the mystery of what's going on with the so-called Russia-Ukraine peace deal that we may or may not have authored, and that our Secretary of State and National Security Advisor may or may not have anything to do with. And how did it come to be like that? And why do they keep saying it was negotiated with a guy who is under sanctions, a Russian under sanctions? And how did he even get into the country to actually have those conversations, given where we are with immigration and the way we've been enforcing it in this country? And I find it interesting, and the atmosphere in which he freely flies in and out of Miami to negotiate this terrible deal, which, by the way, ends up being essentially, well, what would Russia like? They would like Ukraine to surrender. Well, let's just put that in the deal, and now we have a deal. Yay! It's a little weird, to say the least, and the atmosphere is tense. As I said, there was an incident yesterday in Washington, D.C. post-show, and that I guess we have to at least mention. I really don't know how to parse this thing, but two members of the National Guard unit from West Virginia, I think rather foolishly deployed to Washington, D.C. for show to tamp down on God knows what. Trump kept saying tamp down on crime. But we should preface this by saying he then declared D.C. to be a crime-free zone, and there's been no murders in the district, and et cetera, which may or may not be true. And now, of course, there's these shootings. And by the way, I thought it was interesting that they rushed to announce that these two National Guard members, I don't know the gender of the people. The answers are probably in the paper by now. But they rushed to announce that they had been killed in the shooting, which, of course, is terrible, but is also wrong. And I found that to be odd and weird. And at any rate, naturally, it came to pass that the right wing insisted that this was going to be extremist Muslim terrorism. And as it turns out, it was, nobody knows exactly what it was. But, of course, apparently a Muslim person behind it, but with a different motive than their religion, it would seem. But we don't know for sure. And the New York Times has it as part of their live updates page. We'll give you the basics from their coverage and just kind of leave it at that because I don't know much more. But it is an important background story. National Guard members shot near White House Officials called the shooting a targeted attack by a man from Afghanistan who entered the U.S. in 2021. So which officials would those be? Obviously, Trump administration officials. First of all, they're the only officials we've got at this point. But naturally, they're going to sort of, they'll put, well, everybody puts their spin on it. I suppose that's no different from anybody else. President Trump, of course, vowed to redouble the government's efforts to deport migrants. This is not a migrant. This is, as the story will explain to you, well, I'll just let the story do the explaining. Here's the latest, according to what's pinned up at the top. And let's see, lots of bylines on this one. So far, we begin with Campbell Robertson, Devlin Barrett, and Hamed Ali-Aziz. And here it says here's the latest, so let's do it. The suspect accused of critically wounding 2 National Guard members in a shooting near the White House on Wednesday entered the United States in 2021, which Trump administration officials mean to be construed as this is Biden's fault. But hold on. First of all, that's dumb. Second of all, there's more. How did they enter the United States in 2021? Not on a diplomatic waiver as a sanctioned person, I can tell you that, but through a refugee program for people fleeing Afghanistan, officials said. Now, what kind of people make it in through a refugee program for people fleeing Afghanistan? Because there were a lot of people wanting to flee Afghanistan, as you may remember. And the answer, though I'm sure they'll get to it later, is this is one of the people who cooperated with the United States forces during its very long occupation of Afghanistan, in exchange for, of course, the promise that they would take that person and their family with us when we left Afghanistan to safety in America. And they did. And then something changed. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem confirmed on social media that the suspect had entered from Afghanistan in September of 2021 under a Biden-era program called, what a weird name for this. It's not even Operation Open Borders, Operation Let's Kill Service Members. It's Operation Allies Welcome, which provided entry to Afghan nationals fleeing the Taliban takeover of their country after a chaotic withdrawal of U.S. troops. Shall we show more of this, the latest? In a video address right away, President Trump declared the attack an, quote, act of terror and vowed to redouble the government's efforts to deport migrants, who, of course, had nothing to do with this. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services later announced that it had paused immigration applications from Afghan nationals. Local officials said the suspect, who was also injured after opening fire in a busy tourist area on the day before Thanksgiving, appeared to have acted alone, targeting members of the West Virginia National Guard. The suspect was identified, and shall we even make it, do my best at pronouncing the name, even though very often it's our policy not to name the shooters, although I don't think he was doing it for the same sort of seeking out of infamy that your typical school shooter, if there is such a thing as a typical school shooter, would be doing. But it's Ramanullah Lakanwal. That's my best guess. Just 29 years of age. But that's the identification that's given here. Identified by people familiar with the investigation, who, of course, spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to share details publicly. So who was authorized to share those details, and why don't they wait to get those details from them? I never know that. Anyway, here are the details. You don't have to wait. 1. Guard deployments. Mr. Trump, who was in Florida on Wednesday, because vacation for that guy immediately. And by the way, the best holiday in the world. It's all about the meal. Nothing could be better. Anyway, already on vacation on Wednesday, but ordered a deployment of an additional 500 troops to Washington to supplement the more than 2,000 already on the ground. You can read more about that one. That also very dumb. Lots of people commenting, those guys shouldn't even have been there. First of all, they should never have been deployed. Not that they were really being put in harm's way by putting them in Washington, D.C., but it was an unnecessary deployment, and they took them away from their jobs and their families. And they were away from their jobs and families on Thanksgiving, no less. Plus, now they're shot. There's another bit here. Witness accounts. The shooting happened near the entrance to the Farragut West metro station just blocks from the White House. Bystanders reported hearing a short burst of gunfire, followed by a longer barrage, which would probably be them firing back. I don't know. Guard reaction. Before the shooting, some officials and National Guard members worried about the safety of troops that had been deployed to the streets of American cities. I don't worry about that, but I do worry about them getting themselves into trouble by being bored and or harassing people. And then lastly, federal case. Last week, a federal judge ordered a temporary suspension of Mr. Trump's highly contentious deployment of National Guard troops to Washington. Guess what he's adding to that? 500 more troops. That's his response to that. Finding that it was likely illegal. The Trump administration asked for that decision to be blocked after the shooting, but not that they're going to politicize the event or anything like that. And there's more information on all of those things available over at the New York Times. Meanwhile, as I said, the next item on their parade of continuing coverage has to do with the Trump administration pausing immigration from Afghanistan. Within hours of this reporting, of the reporting of this event, they announced they knew, well, we're going to stop all the immigration from Afghanistan until we can figure out what the hell's going on here. But there's more to it than that. And in fact, the reaction, I guess, wasn't all as swift as we thought it might be from that reaction. I saw something last night, which let me open up Instapaper here so I can find it. And I thought this would be useful context if it doesn't come up quickly enough, I would say, in the continuing coverage here. Why is there? There we go. We got to refresh everything. Brandon Friedman, who keeps abreast of things from time to time, posted on Blue Sky this reminder of something he had posted 2 days ago. He says, 2 days ago, so before the shooting, he posted the folks at Afghan Evac, that's the Afghanistan evacuation, but Afghan Evac at Blue Sky, so AfghanEvac.bsky.social, have had in hand 2 days ago a new USCIS directive which largely targets Afghan refugees who fled the Taliban in the wake of the U.S. withdrawal in 2021. Again, this is a post from before the shooting. In case you needed a reminder that the most loathsome people in the world work for DHS. And basically it was word that, yes, you were admitted under Operation Allies Welcome, but in fact the new administration is in town and allies are not welcome. And we even hate allies, as a matter of fact. Plus F NATO. Anyway, you're all going to have your cases reviewed individually, and we may very well deport your sorry asses and possibly doomed asses back to Afghanistan, where you will immediately be labeled as a collaborator with the American forces and possibly arrested or killed, or both. And Brandon further notes yesterday, after the news, he repeats this posting and says, hey, no idea why an Afghan refugee shot National Guard soldiers within walking distance of the White House, but this new USCIS directive was revealed on Monday, worth noting. So, yeah, you should probably keep that in mind. The Afghan evac note here, by the way, we'll just run through the details of the memo here. USCIS refugee memo, summary of key provisions. Effective immediately, USCIS is ordering one, these are bulleted points here. No pun intended there. Geez, wow. A total freeze on all pending Form I-485 applications filed by refugees admitted from January 20th, 2021. What date would that be? The date of the Biden administration coming in. Through February 20th, 2025. With a 1 month grace period for mistakes that the Trump administration may have made. A mandatory re-interview of all principal refugees admitted during that period, a review and potential re-interview of derivative refugees, I guess family members, including spouses, children, and follow to join beneficiaries, and a reassessment of whether each refugee met the definition at the time of admission. The authority being invoked are listed here. It's it's a bunch of statutes which may or may not mean anything to you. One, the definition of a refugee, which is referred to here. I don't even know how you cite these. INA section 101A42. INA Section 207 and 209 regarding termination and adjustment authority, and USCIS asserts the power to undo past refugee admissions. It just does. Consequences: USCIS may terminate refugee status for principals and all derivatives. USCIS may deny green cards even for those who already have them. There is no appeal of a denied refugee-based I-485. The only option is to contest removal in immigration court. And you know how that goes. Refugees placed in removal proceedings may renew their I-485 claim before an immigration judge. And wow, it sounds like an awful lot of fun, doesn't it? Additional conditions. USCIS has 90 days to create the priority list for who will be re-interviewed. The freeze on I-485s remains until lifted in a future memo. The USCIS director or deputy director may authorize exceptions. USCIS is explicitly framing this as correcting expediency, quantity over quality, and vulnerabilities in Biden-era adjudications. They're blaming it all on Biden. The memo states USCIS will revisit all inadmissibility grounds, including those previously waived. The memo highlights the review of the persecutor bar. I'm not certain what that exactly is, but it sounds basically like, you're going to lose, essentially. And it asserts a need to ensure refugees pose no threat to national security or public safety, which is, I'm sure, what they're hyping at the moment. But it should be noted, and probably will be noted in the New York Times coverage at some point, that this particular refugee was admitted in 2021, but in fact vetted and assigned his current status during as I understand it, during the Trump administration. So, they'll be attempting to blame this all on Biden, but there's plenty of, if there is even blame in this, plenty to go around. So there's the pause in immigration that was reported by Elian Peltier and Hamed Ali Aziz together. The Trump administration said on Wednesday that it had stopped processing immigration applications from Afghanistan hours after officials in Washington detained an Afghan man that they said had shot 2 National Guard troops near the White House. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, that's USCIS, which oversees U.S. immigration, made the announcement on social media late Wednesday. Exactly the way you want to handle a situation like that, social media. The 2 Guard members from West Virginia were in critical condition. As you know, I don't need to tell you the rest, how old the shooter was, whatever. The man, who was also injured, entered the United States in 2021 under a Biden-era immigration program for Afghans leaving their country after the government fell to the Taliban. It's like almost as if it's not worth mentioning that, this was a program that stretched way back, or a concept that stretched all the way through our occupation of Afghanistan forever, including the first Trump administration. Let's see, is there anything else here? The pause on immigration applications will affect a number of Afghans who work for the U.S. government or NATO forces during the 20-year war in Afghanistan. They are eligible to apply for what's known as a special immigrant visa, but the Trump administration's recent curbs on immigration have left many of them in limbo, either stranded in third countries or forced into hiding in Afghanistan. And well, gosh, there's a whole lot more. And I did read briefly yesterday, although I don't know if I put the article aside for some reason, that was interesting to note that the process of admission through this program apparently includes, once you are removed from out of Afghanistan, a stint of some time, and in some cases some months, living on National Guard bases. If you're wondering why target the National Guard, it might be not just be that they are people in military uniform. There may have been some motivation to seek out National Guard troops in particular, but that's who would have presented themselves anyway. But the bigger point being made there was that this is a very long and usually very thorough process, and apparently at least some of it for this individual happened during the Trump administration. And never mind all of that. Look over there, Joe Biden, something. He's very sleepy. Anyway, also in the news today, although, again, this too I haven't really put aside, but I can jump back into the mailbox and see what we've got on this one. But it turns out that the New York Times has decided that it is now time to cover the fact that Donald Trump is old and slowing down and falling asleep in his meetings. I don't even think that warranted an email alert from the New York Times, but I did happen to see that being passed around on social media today. It's not a story that I intend to spend a great deal of time on, but what can I tell you? We may end up back on it at any given point. All right. So now you have the background of, I guess, what is the biggest piece of DC-centric news that is available today. There will be more detail emerging, I'm sure, over the rest of the week and into the weekend, and we'll see whether it's gone from the headlines by Monday or not. I mean, in some ways, the timing might be rather fortunate, if there's any way to say that any of this is rather fortunate. And I think on reflection, there is not. So anyway, let's see. What else have I put aside here? Oh, yes. I guess I should also mention this fact, as I thought this would be important enough. I did put it aside in Instapaper. Aaron Rupar, in his usual sorting through of all the video, during Trump's, I guess, emergency announcement, and is it from the White House? I guess it was before he took off for the holiday. Trump's speech, Aaron says, about the shooting in D.C. veered into him attacking the Somali community in Minnesota, which of course had nothing to do with the shooting, but gives away his bigoted game, and I think that's probably true. It is a bigoted game, and a good point from Aaron, and I appreciate his making it. Now, I think from here, we'll treat today's show the way I was, to the extent there was a plan for it at all. The plan was to treat it more or less like I might have treated a pre-recorded show. That is, heading back into some stories that have not made it to air, sometimes because they're long and complicated, sometimes because they're just not of the moment, but make for interesting or necessary background. And let's begin with some of those. There are a few, some longer than others, and I don't know, maybe we'll wait until after the break to start with some of the longer ones. So here's one of the lighter items that you might consider in view of what else is going on, that NBC News picked up the other day. What's the date on this piece? November 24th, so it's just 3 days ago. And let's see. The Trump mobile phone. Did you even know that there was a Trump mobile phone? For those of you who are wondering, where's my Obama phone? But in the Trump era, here it is. But of course, this is interesting. The scandal of the Obama phone, which wasn't even a thing. I mean, only the most basic. There was a germ of truth to it, and it was, of course, I think people's old phones that they donated to a charity that would be refurbished and turned into emergency call only or lifeline phones for abused women, etc. It was not free telephones or free phone service for everybody who had the right skin color or anything like what MAGA believed it was. But now there will be Trump phones. But of course, you have to pay for the Trump phones. But it's okay because they're gold in color, essentially. What is it? The Trump mobile phone is nowhere to be found after months of delay, which, again, was news. It was news to me that there even was supposed to be a Trump mobile phone. But if you told me there was going to be one, I would say I bet it'll be delayed. And I would also say I'd make a small bet that Trump or whoever was supposed to be in charge of the phones would say they would be out in 2 weeks. What the hell is this story? I never heard about it. Trump Mobile has posted conflicting photos of the phone and scrubbed mention of its made in the USA promise. Wow. Well, what else would be the point of a phone like this? We don't need more phones. Who is the author of the piece? Brian Chung, who is, I assume, no relation to Stephen Chung, who belongs in prison, but also works for the White House at the moment, and also belongs in prison because he works at this White House. But he had pre-existing charges against him, in my mind. All right, what's the story? In June, so we've missed this since June, President Donald Trump's two older sons held an event at Trump Tower, missed it entirely, where they touted a new made in the USA mobile phone. That is hard to believe that would really be the case, but that's what they were saying. And as if to prove the point, apparently it makes the story that this phone had an American flag on its back. That's the case of the phone. See? It's made in America. It has an American flag on it. Now, that doesn't actually mean anything. And by the way, neither does their promise that it would be made in America. So, in addition to the manufacturing of the phone, there was also the announcement that there would be a new wireless service called Trump Mobile, because they don't know how to name things. The phone was announced on the 10th anniversary of Trump's presidential campaign launch, and I guess that's why they did it at Trump Tower, and was the Trump brand's first foray into mobile products and services. According to the initial announcement, the phone was supposed to be released in August. So, whatever. Water, meat, telephones, sneakers, Bibles, you name it. Trump is the Amway of, I was going to say the Amway of rip-off artists, but Amway is the Amway of rip-off artists. Anyway, here comes that break. And thank gosh, we have it all timed out here. But anyway, I'll tell you this. 3 months later, after that announcement, there are no signs that the phone has become a reality. Well, that's sort of the Trump MO. Nothing ever becomes a reality. NBC News placed an order for a T1 phone in August. That's what they're calling it, the T1, paying the $100 deposit. Isn't that interesting? You had to make a deposit for the purposes of tracking the $499 phone's development. And as phone prices go these days, that's actually not all that bad. After confirming with the credit card company that the transaction was not fraudulent, and who can really guarantee that with a Trump company, NBC News received a confirmation email verifying the order, but the company provided no proactive updates on the order or after the order. So I don't know that anybody can confirm that that's not fraudulent. It's a fraud in progress. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, tomorrow's show, it was just too much for me to engineer the breaks into tomorrow's show. So it is commercial free if you are listening to, the stream will be brand new and will be on at 9, but it won't be a live show, but it will be for you, it'll be a live stream. But yeah, the commercial breaks were too much to fit in there. I found a way to engineer them in last time I did a pre-recorded show, but wow, what a pain in the neck. I got to find a new method for doing this. It's when it's done in real time, I just sit here and I begin at the certain time and I run my alarms and everything syncs up just fine. When I'm pre-recording, I could wait for the top of the hour and then start and sync it to everything. But, I stop and start and I read the pieces and it's just too difficult to keep track of things. And then I thought I would go back and engineer breaks in, and then I ran out of time. Anyway, so lucky you, there'll be no commercials for the live stream, though there are breaks in between stories that I will probably identify, and I'll take advantage of the Libsyn advertising opportunity and throw in a couple of breaks just so you all can have an opportunity to get up and I don't know what you do. Make popcorn, go to the bathroom, do your taxes. I don't know what you do during the breaks. That's your business. Anyway, one thing you're not going to be doing during any of the breaks is receiving your T1 mobile phone from Trump Mobile, apparently. Again, NBC News was covering the story, and I guess as part of their coverage, decided to pay Trump $100. I mean, you know why they had to do that. They were paying a deposit to reserve one of the phones so that they could report definitively, I didn't get that phone. So fine, although they could have just talked to sources. But could you find sources? Like, who would order a Trump phone and talk to NBC News about not getting it? Probably nobody. Maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene maybe now would do it. But at the time, that was the way you would have to cover this story. So, yes, they gave $100 to Trump. Big deal. After confirming with the credit card company the transaction was not fraudulent, which, again, I think they need to reassess, NBC News got a confirmation email verifying the order, but the company provided no proactive updates after the order. NBC News made 5 separate phone calls to the Trump Mobile customer support line. There is one. Between September and November. At one point in October, the call operator promised a specific ship date, November 13th. They didn't even go to the 2-week thing. They just said, oh, yeah, November 13th. Well, that date passed without an update. And when NBC News followed up with the call center, an operator said the delivery now would be in, quote, the beginning of December with no specific date, or year for that matter. The operator cited the government shutdown as a reason for the delay without further explanation. And I'll just say this, highly unlikely. Of course, it's not a government phone. The government isn't doing anything to move the project along, though I suppose it is possible. You could convince me that some sort of government regulation required that they file some paperwork at some point and the person who was supposed to process it was out because of the government shutdown, but I really doubt it. I think that's not the case. I think they're just trading on which is amazing because they're trading on the fact that the person who's putting the phone out is the president of the United States, which ordinarily would be like, yeah, you can't actually do this deal, but, well, you know, the president, the government shutdown, and so therefore the phone is going to be delayed. Anyway, they're obviously sort of renting out a call center here. There's no company. I doubt very much that they have their own call center. They're just renting call center personnel elsewhere, which you can do. And which a lot of people do. Trump Mobile launched the T1 phone in tandem with a number of phone service offerings, including a 5G service plan, and I thought MAGA people thought that caused cancer. Priced at, by the way, $47.45, $47.45 per month, a nod to the president's terms, obviously. In addition to, I'm surprised it wasn't $14.88, but that's too inexpensive, I guess. Now, this is really something. What a claim to make in all of this. And again, this is also, when it comes time for the criminal trial for all of this, should be used as evidence that they absolutely intended to trade on Trump's position in the government, position as president of the United States in order to sell these phones. Ready for this one? In addition to unlimited talk for your $47.45 per month, talk, text, and data, the plan promised, ready for this, telehealth services, including virtual medical care. This is this is supposed to be his healthcare plan in addition to it. So no wonder you're not getting it. Now, I guess they could also just end up saying, well, you know, it's a mobile phone, so you can access telehealth services, including virtual medical care, through our phone using an app. Which, you know, if the doctor uses that app, you can use that app too and talk to your doctor via your phone. What an innovation. But yeah, I just think that they probably mean for the gullible consumers of T1 phones, if there were any, and Trump mobile phone services, if there was any, they would believe, oh yeah, I'm getting I don't need health insurance anymore. $47.45 covers my telephone bill and medical insurance coverage. Well, it doesn't. Not the least of which Not the least of the reasons being there's no damn phone. They just took your $100. Anyway, but since the original announcement, plans appear to be in flux, just like the real healthcare plan, which also isn't real and has nothing to do with the mobile phone. Quiet edits to the Trump mobile website suggest that details around the phone's design and production may have changed since it was announced. The Trump mobile website has scrubbed any mention of a specific release month, but continues to collect $100 down payments on the promise of availability, quote, later this year. It is November 27th. There's just not a lot of year left. Neither Trump Mobile nor the Trump Organization responded to NBC News' multiple requests for comment on when the phone would be released and why it's delayed. When the company announced the phone in June, photos of the website promised a phone featuring an iPhone-like cluster of 3 cameras on its back. But in August, Trump Mobile's X account posted, "The wait is almost over." The post featured a photo of a supposed T1 phone with a completely different design, including more than 3 rear cameras, which is okay by itself. But of course, the truth is that the first picture was of a phone that isn't the Trump mobile phone, and the second picture was also probably a picture of a phone that wasn't the Trump mobile phone. They're just phones. And, they reserve the right to give you something completely different than they were picturing all along. Gee whiz. And also, they reserve the right to not give you anything because he's the president of the United States, and if everybody ends up being ripped off, he just pardons whoever stole the money. So, be careful about doing business with this guy. Anyway, and also, I guess the idea of the thing, well, it'll be on the market soon, 2 weeks, which I guess at this point really is the beginning of December, 2 weeks. But I thought maybe more important in the pursuit of this story, not to critique NBC News on it necessarily. You can call people all you want. When are we going to get the phone? And I guess now that they've scrubbed the made in the USA part, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But at some point prior to this, they could have said, so if it's made in the USA and you're saying you're going to ship it, in a week or 2 weeks or pretty soon or whatever, can you tell me where is the factory that makes these things? Like, wouldn't there be people busy already making them if they were ready to be in the hands of consumers in 2 weeks? And the answer to that normally would be yes, but the answer to it in reality is no, because there's no factory. Anyway, I don't know why they didn't ask that question. So, again, they changed the design, and as it turns out, The Verge, tech reporters, reported that the phone appeared to be, the second time around, a render of a Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. When phone case company Spigen, S-P-I-G-E-N, I don't know how that's pronounced, noticed that the photo appeared to be a doctored image of a Samsung in one of its cases, the company suggested it would sue. Very Trumpian thing to do and a very Trumpian way of doing it by posting on social media, "Lawsuit incoming," and then a picture of this mock-up of the Trump phone that they made, which, by the way, on the back of it, it has just a big T. They've replaced the American flag on the back, apparently, with a giant T because of how patriotic they are. And this one has 5 cameras on the back, so it's getting to be like razor blades. NBC News has not been able to identify any lawsuit from Spigen, and the company has not responded to repeated requests for comment, so it might be a wholly owned subsidiary of Trump Organization, given that track record. In late June, the same month the phone was announced, the website removed any mention of Made in the USA, as was originally promised, and I'm sure was one of the motivating factors for most of the people to put their $100 deposits down, not just that it was going to Trump. Instead, the website now says the phone is, quote, brought to life right here in the USA with American hands behind every device. No one knows what that's supposed to mean, but it could be fulfilled as true by saying, well, we manufactured it in China, but we turn them on here in the United States. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay. So with American hands behind every device, apparently, and that the phone has, quote, American proud design. Okay. The T1 phone has been met with skepticism since its unveiling. It hasn't actually been unveiled, by the way. Smartphone industry insiders have suggested it's nearly impossible to manufacture a made-in-the-USA smartphone on as quick a timeline as Trump Mobile has promised, and without some Chinese involvement. But they keep kicking the can down the road, and it's not to preserve the made-in-the-USA promise. It's just, we're not going to give you a phone. Todd Weaver, the founder and CEO of Purism, a Carlsbad, California-based company that manufactures the only U.S.-made smartphone on the market, said that when his company started, there was no skilled labor in the U.S. capable of manufacturing a phone, and nobody had done it before. He said that creating a chain of production that would allow for a made-in-the-USA label was time and labor-intensive. Well, it's going to be labor-intensive. You need labor. We actually had to go over to China with our designs to learn the process, the manufacturing process, that is, to see what are all the steps, Weaver said. He said it took him 6 years to take his Liberty phone from idea to production, which Purism sells at a $2,000 price point, in case you're wondering why this isn't more often done in the U.S. And even then, Liberty phone isn't entirely American sourced, even if it is branded as made in the USA electronics. Most of its materials come from the United States, Canada, or Europe. Other parts, like the chassis, are made in different countries, including China and India, according to the company. While Trump Mobile customers wait for the T1, good luck, the company is offering other phones for sale, including refurbished iPhones, which are, of course, primarily produced in China, and devices from Samsung, a Korean company. Trump Mobile said both devices are, quote, brought to life right here in the USA, which, of course, means nothing. All right, I know that was a longer story than I thought it was going to be, but it's just rather incredible. Every time you read one of these short and simple things about Trump basically being full of it, well, it's hard not to embellish as you go along. Okay, so let's see. A few other items that have been floating around out here present themselves as useful for a day like today. Let me go to this one. I think I should see who pointed this one out to me. I can't remember, but did I get email about it? I think so. And let me see if I can dig up the email that brought it to my attention so I can properly credit. Did they put the title of the piece in the email? No. All right. So, well, that's too bad. I don't know whether I can come up with the referral email very quickly. Here we go. I got it. Woo! Wow, that's pretty amazing. I starred it so that I would be able to find it later. And it comes from, well, we got the real name on the email, but now I remember that this is somebody who ordinarily prefers to be identified by the Daily Kos and other places online identity. And I had to go, remember this one? I had to go back and edit one of the shows to change that mention. Shambhala Jones, right? Wasn't it the user known or the listener known as Shambhala Jones? Okay. And this time noted in the signature here, but referring me to a piece on Daily Kos, and is it, in fact, your own piece? Okay, so let me go and grab it and add it to the lineup because it makes a great addition, I think, especially in light of all the things going on. It's got Epstein, it's got Russia, it's got Shambhala Jones, cesspool and chaos, the Russian connection in the Epstein affair. Didn't know that there was one. And this went up on November 15th, so it's a little late, but better late than never, but also better earlier than late, if we're being honest. And we failed on that front. Another Daily Kos commentator begins referenced this article in a comment on a different post, but that comment has been and gone, and the article seems too relevant to pass with it. What's going on here? The original article by Francois Tom and dateline July 30th, 2025 is on the French Russian Desk website. A link here provided in case you want to follow it and get there yourself, and is reproduced in European Security, also linked here. You may need Google Translate for some of the articles on those sites, but this one is in English. The article is titled Cesspool and Chaos, the Russian Connection in the Epstein Affair, and starts with this excerpt. In this explosive article, French historian Francois Thom highlights the close relationship between the late financier Jeffrey Epstein and the father of his accomplice, Ghislaine, her father being Robert Maxwell, the late British press magnate on the one hand, that's a long hand, that's a lot of people, and the upper echelons of Soviet and then Russian power on the other. This raises a troubling question. What if it was the FSB that held the infamous list of Epstein's clients? What better way to compromise the American elite than to possess evidence of participation in orgies with minors? Well, I could think of more savory ways, but, this is going to be compromising information, so it's never going to be great. All right. There's a table of contents here for links to lots of very important and juicy and I imagine long stories here, but let's take a look. The Russian connection. What is documented? Where did the money come from? That's always been the question. In the wake of Robert Maxwell, dangerous liaisons, the empire of compromat, and the relationship between Epstein and Trump. At around 7,000 words, the article is quite lengthy, but well worth a read or a listen, which I guess would be my part here. It includes a link to an episode of the Deep Dive podcast, which summarizes it in 37 minutes. Oh my goodness. It might be best for you to go and read it there, actually. My apologies for not name checking the original commenter, but I've been unable so far to find their comment again. All right. So I guess I'm going to take a glance at this. I guess I should have looked ahead of time. I knew it was long. I don't know how long it would take to read through the whole thing, but apparently a summary of it runs 37 minutes at the Deep Dive podcast. But let me take a quick look and see what kind of presentation this is and how long it might take to get through something like this. But we'll read through perhaps part one as a teaser, although it does appear to be illustrated by an incredible number of AI images, which I know some people find to be a distinct turnoff in all of this. And I can't tell if this whole thing is part one or whether this includes all of it. Let me see about this table of contents here. All right. I'm just going to take a look here right up top. European Security, Cesspool and Chaos, the Russian Connection in the Epstein Affair. We mentioned the italicized introduction earlier. Francois Thom takes over at this point. The Epstein case is associated in the public mind with the scandal of the gigantic pedophile ring that Epstein and accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell organized and exploited with impunity for years. The question of the hidden protections enjoyed by the two accomplices gave rise to a proliferation of hypotheses encouraged by Epstein himself, who claimed to, quote, belong to intelligence. The MAGA movement insists on the role of Mossad in the meteoric career of the pedophile con artist. Tucker Carlson, who sucks, and you should never listen to him, claims that Epstein was an Israeli agent and that Trump is covering up the case for this reason. The left accuses the CIA of playing a part in Epstein's quick release after his first arrest in 2008. In 2019, Russian state media had a field day with the Epstein affair, a golden opportunity to denounce the degenerate global elites. In the U.S., the political debate revolves obsessively around the client list, the tree that hides the forest, namely the construction of a blackmail empire whose products are accessible to hostile powers. And for President Trump, many observers have been surprised that he equates the Epstein affair with what he calls the Russia hoax, the investigation into Russian interference in his favor during the 2016 election. Why is he linking Epstein to Russia? Asks Christopher Steele, His name's mud in those circles, but whatever. He is, of course, a former agent of the British Secret Service, British Secret Intelligence Service, and a Russia specialist. And the name, anyway, behind the supposed Steele dossier. It's clear that in his mind, Epstein is associated with Russia, at least for Trump, apparently. So here's that first part here, the Russian connection. What is documented? Why not find out? There is no record of Epstein traveling to Russia before 2014. This does not mean that Epstein never visited Moscow earlier, and some information on that, it says see below. Epstein's Russian connection was first documented after the publication of an in-depth investigation by the Dossier Center, a hacker organization funded by Mikhail Khodorkovsky. It revealed that there was a genuine partnership between Jeffrey Epstein and the Kremlin that was highly profitable for both parties. Epstein had a contact at the highest level with Moscow. He was interested in exploiting the exceptional financial opportunities offered by Russia, and there were many, of course, created an oligarchy out of them. The Kremlin was eager to seek advice from his expert in tax, in tax havens and money laundering, enlisting his help in offering a cover to Russian agents sent to the U.S. and calling on his talents as a recruiter to arrange access to American targets of interest to the FSB. The relationship of trust was not built overnight and must have existed well before 2014. Epstein's contact was Sergei Belyakov, then the Deputy Minister of Economic Development and later Director of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, SPIEF. They have a foundation as well, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum Foundation. His mission was to attract foreign investment, and that seems to be the mission of every Russian, apparently. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum is a favorite hunting ground for attractive escorts tasked with harpooning businessmen on behalf of Russian services. And then here, what appears to be a very obvious AI rendering of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 almost identical looking and maybe actually identical looking women who are, I guess, supposed to be looking fetchingly at the camera here, but there's no camera because it's AI. Unsurprisingly, Belyakov is also a graduate of the FSB Academy. His career has risen rapidly. He was an advisor to oligarch Oleg Deripaska, we know that name, then assistant to the Minister of Economic Development, Elvira, I'm sure it's Elvira, Nabulina is my best guess at that name, who now heads the Central Bank of Russia. Documents hacked by the Dossier Center team reveal that in the spring of 2014, Belyakov sought Epstein's advice on how to circumvent Western sanctions. Well, if you're the right kind of person, you can circumvent sanctions, as you'll find out tomorrow, by asking for a special waiver from the Trump administration and getting it. All right, some bullet points here. One of these, Belyakov sought Epstein's advice on how to circumvent Western sanctions. One of these was the so-called new bank that, quote, could be modeled after a capitalistic commercial bank lending 9 times its reserve, not the World Bank. Those models are antiquated, he proposed. I guess this is an Epstein email point. And then Epstein also suggested launching an alternative to Bitcoin known as BRIC, BRIC, and the possibility of providing loans worth $500 billion, though he did not specify the currency. That could be $10 in the wrong currency. Moreover, Epstein believed that Russia could create new currencies pegged to oil or develop smart contracts regulated by computers. In addition, Epstein shared his views on the Russian economy with Belyakov. For example, when in December of 2014, the Russian central bank raised its benchmark rate to 17%, Epstein wrote, "Bad advice to raise rates. It sends the wrong sign." Okay, so they're in communication about Epstein purporting to be able to give economic advice to these guys. I don't know whether they were listening to it or not. In addition, he used his network to send leading Western business executives of interest to the Kremlin, such as Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, and Nathan Myhrvold, former chief technology officer at Microsoft, both sent to the St. Petersburg Economic Forum for possible recruitment, and they are pictured herein. This assistance was crucial for Moscow at a time when many Westerners were boycotting Russia. In July of 2014, Belyakov, then Russian Deputy Minister of Economic Development, personally intervened to help Jeffrey Epstein obtain a Russian visa. This would be, 2014 would have been what? Shoot down of the KLM airliner over Ukraine and invasion of the Crimea, annexation of the Crimea, right? So that's why people were boycotting, I guess. These were with leading figures at the heart of the Russian economic policy: Deputy Finance Minister Sergei Storchak, Central Bank Deputy Chairman Alexei Simonovsky, and even the Minister of Economic Development himself, Alexei Ulyukayev. Okay. But here again, the mystery remains. It is not known whether Epstein's visit actually took place. Got the visa. Did he go? Don't know. Not for sure. Among well-bred men, and there are none involved in this story, I guess, small favors are usual. In July of 2015, Epstein contacted Belyakov with an urgent problem. A Russian girl from Moscow, Guzel Ganaeva, was in New York and, quote, trying to blackmail a group of powerful businessmen. Ganaeva had ensnared a close friend and associate of Epstein, billionaire Leon Black. No problem, Belyakov provided Epstein with a detailed intelligence file on Ganaeva, who he claimed was working alone and would be highly sensitive to the threat of deportation from the United States. Leon Black paid huge sums to Epstein. They are the story of those huge sums, I guess, linked inside this story. The U.S. Senate Finance Committee reviewed a part of a confidential Treasury Department file on Epstein, and we know that is of renewed interest these days. The file shows that Epstein used several Russian banks now under sanctions to process payments related to his sex trafficking network, and that would be a good reason to sanction a bank, I think. A significant number of his victims came from Russia, Belarus, and other Eastern European countries, establishing a direct financial link between his criminal enterprise and financial institutions in the region. The scale of the transactions is staggering. One of his bank accounts alone recorded 4,725 transfers, totaling nearly $1.1 billion, representing thousands of potential leads for investigation. I guess so, and Ron Wyden is on that trail. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with this reading of this unusual piece. It reads a little funny, I guess, maybe because I don't know whether it was originally written in English or translated into English, but it's of foreign origin, so it's a little odd in the way it's presented, but I think it makes so far a reasonably credible case, and we should point out at this juncture, because I just used the word point, that the idea that some significant number of the girls exploited by Epstein would be Eastern European should not surprise anybody at this point. And we should point out that this was the MO of Trump's forays into the modeling business. Before he was doing steaks, water, shoes, phones, and I forget what else. Plus social media and cryptocurrency as well, of course, these days. But back in his younger days, when I guess he was more apt to exploit those girls himself, and he was running a modeling agency, which he modeled his modeling agency after existing scams of the same nature. But at any rate, should be no surprise that a lot of the sex trafficking went on with victims from the former Eastern Bloc, as mentioned here in the article. Anyway, let's see. So they did also mention that a significant number of his victims not only came from the region, but the scale of the transactions and the banking records is rather amazing and represents thousands of potential leads for investigation. Over almost 5,000 individual transfers totaling over $1 billion. This was not just a matter of Epstein providing minor services to the Kremlin. minor. Oh no. The sex trafficking was a cover for something else. It turns out that Epstein had a predilection for Russian female employees. His assistant, Svetlana Pozhidaeva. Svetlana apparently goes by the nickname of Lana. Well, Lana, obtained an O1 talent visa for the United States thanks to a letter of recommendation from Belyakov. And now we verge into immigration hypocrisy stories. By the way, we're on like week 5,000 of the wait 2 weeks for an explanation of Melania's immigration status, as everyone can remember. But yeah, O1 talent visa. You can't find this person. It's a unique talent. You can't find one of these in the United States. And lo and behold, that's how almost all of Trump's models were imported this way, through exploitation of visa loopholes to which they were probably not entitled. This lady deserves our attention. A graduate of the prestigious Moscow State Institute of International Relations, the Foreign Ministry's academy that trains Russian diplomats and intelligence agents. She is multilingual, but her career took an unexpected turn. During her brilliant studies, she ended up becoming a model for some reason, instead of an intellectual, but, you could be both. Presented by MC2, a modeling agency owned by Frenchman Jean-Luc Brunel, a sexual predator himself and Epstein's pimp, allegedly, or at least maybe they don't say allegedly, they just say it outright. He was arrested in 2020 and was found, you'll never believe it, hanged in his cell. Like that other guy that we often talk about, Jeffrey Epstein. She moved to the United States and became an associate of Jeffrey Epstein. So, okay. Here's a photo of the two of them together, allegedly. There she is. She became involved in charity work, chairing a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs, and Education Advance, a New York association whose aim is to support science and technology in education. Most of the $56,000 in funding for the latter was provided by Epstein in 2017. He's just trying to become a mentor to, nice young women who are looking for ways into the sciences, and he can help. And I don't know whether this, too, is a manipulated photo, but this picture of Epstein with Lana here, it should be noted that immediately behind Epstein and Lana are Woody Allen and Sunyi Previn. So, no reason that they would be together. Just putting that out there. It's in the photo. Where were we with this? Oh, yes, right. Epstein also donated $50,000 to Pozhidaeva for the Open Cog Foundation, a project to develop an open-source artificial intelligence framework. How do you like that? That's in early days. Epstein also offered her the opportunity to study and attend conferences with scientists. Whee! What she liked was that he gave a lot to science and helped researchers and interesting people, a source told the Irish Mail on Sunday. I guess is that the Daily Mail, but published in Ireland. For Yuri Shvets, a KGB defector who was one of the first to show Epstein's network had converged with that of the FSB, Pozhidaeva's case is clear. How could someone as smart and educated as Pozhidaeva become a women's rights activist while possibly seeking the support of Jean-Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein, who led and participated in human trafficking and the rape of underage girls for more than 2 decades? There is only one explanation. She was an agent infiltrated with the help of Jeffrey Epstein to penetrate the American network linked to supercomputers and artificial intelligence. Well, she's in the right place. Those would be the people most susceptible to this sort of honey trap, I think. Jean-Luc Brunel, the recruiter who allegedly supplied more than 1,000 minors to his friend Jeffrey Epstein, is then pictured here. Shvets recalls that Putin considers artificial intelligence, supercomputers, and control of advanced information technology to be the most crucial national security issue for Russia, as essential to the survival of his regime as the atomic bomb was to Stalin. It may be overstating the case, but That is what it said here. 17,000 Russian computer scientists work in the United States, and many of them are linked to Russian intelligence services, brilliant people who have been employed by Apple, Microsoft, and other companies for years. Oh no. Another Russian collaborator of Epstein's, next pictured here, is Masha Drakova. Her name is Maria, but nicknamed Masha Drakova. Similarly, followed an unusual path to infiltrate Silicon Valley. This fervent supporter of Vladimir Putin, pictured here wearing a Putin graphic T-shirt in dramatic style, I'll say. This fervent supporter of Putin's a former activist in the Nashi youth movement, about which I know nothing. That's a new one for me. She was initially tasked with befriending, and more if possible, Russian opponents. She became an associate of Konstantin Rykov, I guess, R-I-R-Y rather, K-O-V, the Kremlin's chief troll and a key figure in the Senate investigation into Russian interference in the U.S. elections. Having obtained an E-16 visa, also known as an Einstein visa, intended for foreigners with extraordinary abilities, thanks to the intervention of Esther Dyson, an old acquaintance of Epstein who sits on the board of directors of Russian search engine giant Yandex NV, she moved to the United States where she became press secretary to Jeffrey Epstein. Who even knew he had a press secretary? It's then in a text box here says Drakova's real task appears to be finding American investors for Russia to finance technologies that could be particularly useful to the Kremlin. Coincidentally, in 2016, she began to invest in technology startups, starting N-Tech Lab, which is now at least 37% owned by Rostech, i.e. the Russian government. N-Tech Lab uses AI to analyze big data. I don't even know what that means, but that's one of those buzzwords that they throw around and ask for $1 billion. What do you do with AI? Oh, I analyze big data. What big data? Why? I don't know. Anyway, another example includes Impulse VC, a Moscow-based company backed by Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich. Is that right? Yeah, Abramovich. And Stealth Worker. That's the name of the company. All one word. Stealth Worker, a service that connects employers with cybersecurity professionals. She has also invested more than $4 million in the artificial intelligence startup Digital Genius. But that was only the beginning. In 2017, Drakova raised funds for Day One Ventures, a Silicon Valley venture capital fund that she set up. She's raised more than $70 million to date. Documents filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission show that Day One Ventures is backed by a small group of wealthy individuals, most likely from Russia. Epstein's shenanigans have caused trouble for Deutsche Bank, which was fined $150 million by New York regulators for knowingly exempting wealthy and high-risk clients such as Epstein and Russian oligarchs from normal internal controls. Specifically regarding Epstein, Deutsche Bank processed payments to women with Eastern European surnames and suspicious cash withdrawals without responding to obvious red flags. The same institutional flaws that allowed Russian money laundering also facilitated the financing of Epstein, after all this time. Epstein's sex trafficking. The New York banking regulators report states that the Deutsche Bank team monitoring Epstein's accounts received an alert, quote, concerning payments to a Russian model and a publicist, but the bank's monitoring team ignored the alert. JP Morgan Chase had a similar mishap. It had to settle 2 federal lawsuits totaling $365 million, alleging that the bank had laundered money for Jeffrey Epstein from at least 1998 to 2013. The same bank transferred more than $1 billion to a company owned by Russian mafia boss Semyon Mogilevich between January 2010 and July of 2015. So some familiar names coming up here. Epstein's sex trafficking thus served to conceal another essential mission he carried out on behalf of Russia's intelligence, providing cover for Russian beauties tasked with infiltrating Silicon Valley. So I guess you raise a model/spy, send her to the United States. Jeffrey Epstein would give her cover employment and maybe exploit her or use her to exploit other people as well. Now you got a job working in the United States. You are quote unquote legit. Your job is raising investment capital from suckers who you might honey trap into making those investments and getting compromising information on the titans of industry along the way. So let's continue on here. This is probably where we should look for the origins of the pro-Russian orientation of many of the big tech giants. The Wall Street Journal reports that Epstein arranged meetings in 2006 between Peter Thiel and the Russian ambassador to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin. I think Churkin's name comes up, or didn't Churkin's name come up in one of the more recent readings of, what were we reading about? Was it Witkoff or somebody else saying, yeah, Churkin's great, he's taking my advice on everything? Or was that Epstein? I can't even remember now that I think about it. All right, well, let's see if this unravels things. 3 days after Churkin's death, Epstein sent this email to Peter Thiel: my friend, the Russian ambassador, is dead. Life is short. Let's start with dessert. Not particularly revealing. Epstein's address book is full of names that could be of interest to foreign intelligence services. In 2014, Epstein met 3 times with William Burns, who was then Deputy Secretary of State in the Obama administration. President Biden appointed Burns as head of the CIA in 2021. I don't think I even registered that name, but okay. But that'll be, of course, no doubt fuel for Trump's insistence on investigating Democrats, anyway, with connections to Epstein. In 2016, Epstein began cultivating Trump's entourage. He told all and sundry that Trump could win. He attempted to reconnect with Tom Barrack, the financier and close ally of Trump, with whom Epstein had ties in the 1980s. You know that name, of course, from Trump World before. In August, he organized a lunch with Barrack, who was an informal advisor to the Trump campaign at the time. He also was invited to Epstein's home in September of 2016, with Vitaly Churkin and Woody Allen, oddly enough. Between 2015 and 2017, the year of his death, Churkin met with Epstein at least 8 times. One can imagine that the Russians appreciated Epstein's high-level connections in politics, business, and academia. Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had access to the heart of the British monarchy as well, as you know. Epstein is reported to have said, "There's only one person who loves sex more than I do, and that's Prince Andrew." Well, he's not Prince Andrew anymore, and Jeffrey Epstein is no more as well. In light of the above, one can only agree with the conclusions of Niels Groneveld, a Dutch cybersecurity expert. That's all you can do is agree with him, so don't try anything else. What does he have to say? Epstein's interactions with the Russian elite were not just social or financial, they were strategic, part of a complex network of power, influence, and espionage that linked him to the most powerful circles in Moscow. Epstein's expertise in managing complex financial structures, if he actually had that, I don't know, made him a valuable asset to Russian oligarchs seeking to protect their wealth from political instability and economic sanctions. In return, Epstein gained access to influential Russian figures, establishing himself as a trusted advisor and financier with the Moscow elite. These relationships were mutually beneficial, allowing Epstein to expand his financial empire while providing Russian oligarchs with strategic footholds in Western markets. Epstein's influence in Russia extended beyond financial transactions. He had relationships with political figures who wielded considerable influence within the Kremlin. These relationships were not merely social, they were strategic alliances designed to give Epstein political clout and protection. Epstein's political network in Russia included senior Russian government officials, influential advisors close to Putin, and members of the Russian security and intelligence services. These relationships gave him access to sensitive political information and strategic insights into Kremlin policy, making him an authority on the subject, I guess. One of the most significant aspects of Epstein's relationships with Russia is the silence surrounding it. Well, it's been all silence so far for us. Despite his close ties to the Russian elite, Epstein's activities have been largely ignored. This silence is not simply a matter of discretion. It reflects the shield of power and influence that surrounds the Russian political elite. The big question is how far back Epstein's relationship with the Kremlin goes. Was the FSB behind the large-scale compromat operation deployed on U.S. soil, or did it simply jump on the bandwagon and use its output like any other customer? Was Epstein just a front man, or did he set up his own trafficking ring? Well, I guess that brings us to part 2 of the table of contents. Where did the money come from? Well, why not? We'll take a look. This is a long article, though, isn't it? I don't think we're going to make it all the way through this, and we may shift gears come break time. But let's take a look at Epstein's tortuous biography. Born in 1953, we're all going to be tortured here. He taught mathematics and physics at a private high school without a degree. It wasn't in 1953 that he did it. He was just a baby then, but okay. Later on, in 1980, he began a career as a trader at Bear Stearns in the department dedicated to special products and tax strategy advice for the company's wealthiest clients. No degree, just doing it. Okay. It appears that his blackmail activities initially consisted of finding ways for his clients to evade taxes and then holding them with this compromat. He left Bear Stearns in April of 1981 when the company was under investigation for insider trading. In 1982, he founded his own financial management company, J. Epstein and Company. So 1982, born in 1953. So what is he, 29 years old? 30 years old, starting his own company? Well, maybe. He boasted that he would accept only clients with assets worth over $1 billion, which in 1982 was his real serious thing. This is where the mystery thickens. According to legend, Epstein immediately began collecting clients in 1982, writes Landon Thomas, his first biographer, but he kept all his contracts and clients secret with one exception. Billionaire Leslie Wexner, a former friend of Epstein's, journalist Jesse Kornbluth, recounts, "When we met in 1986, Epstein's double identity intrigued me. He said he didn't just manage the money of clients with colossal fortunes, but that he was also a high-level bounty hunter." Really? He sometimes worked for governments to recover money stolen by African dictators. Other times, these dictators hired him to help them hide their stolen money. Epstein once told journalist Michael Wolff that he practiced the opposite of a Ponzi scheme. In a Ponzi scheme, you make people believe that money exists, although it doesn't exist. In my scheme, money that exists appears not to exist. In 1987, Jeffrey Epstein was introduced to Stephen Hoffenberg by a British arms dealer named Douglas Leese, for whom Epstein was consulting in the United Kingdom. Before we launch into that story, I guess I'll say this much. My first astonishment of his securing these jobs without a degree, actually, maybe it makes a certain amount of sense. Usually in the degree programs where you allegedly train for these jobs, but honestly, all programs, basically you get some sort of interesting generalized background and then you learn your job on the job. And they tell you pretty much when you get there, throw out everything you learned. I'll teach you all you need to know from here on in. But part of the training usually involves, I don't know how well it sticks, but for 75% of them or so, it probably sticks. There's ethical training, essentially, and training about what are the limitations and what are the regulatory restrictions on doing most of what Jeffrey Epstein ended up doing. But if you skip that part and all you got to do is, well, this number is higher than that number, so let's go do this thing, I guess it helps explain how you get into the business and then enter into it with none of the ethical training or background. Not that they're all following that ethical advice, but at least they get it. And he just skipped that part. Anyway, on to his relationship with Stephen Hoffenberg, British arms dealer. Epstein was introduced to Stephen Hoffenberg by British arms dealer Douglas Leese, for whom Epstein was consulting in the UK. Hoffenberg ran Towers Financial Corporation, a debt collection agency. Lease recommended Epstein to him in these terms: "This guy is a genius. He excels at selling securities, and he has no morals." This indicates how extensive Epstein's networks already were at the time. Douglas Lease had close ties to an offshore bank, the Bank of N.T. Butterfield in Bermuda. He is said to have been Epstein's mentor, facilitating his entry into high-level financial circles linked to the arms industry. Epstein had an Austrian passport under a false name, listing Saudi Arabia as his primary country of residence. His passport dated back to the 1980s. That seems unusual all by itself, but I guess if you learn at an early age you can get away with just about anything, you just go start doing just about anything. It is interesting, and it very likely then, makes a certain amount of sense that if you're able to procure illegally young girls for powerful people, they will become your mentor and make introductions to you. So I guess it works. Hoffenberg hired Epstein between 1987 and 1993 to help him manage Towers Financial Corporation, paying him $25,000 a month and granting him a $2 million loan in 1988 that Epstein never had to repay. That's, of course, not a loan. Hoffenberg set up a Ponzi scheme, committing the largest financial fraud in American history before Bernie Madoff. He and several employees were arrested and imprisoned in 1994, but Jeffrey Epstein was not prosecuted. According to journalist Vicky Ward, he most certainly cooperated secretly with the prosecution against Hoffenberg and gave at least 3 interviews to prosecutors. If his case had gone to trial, a well-informed source claims that it would probably have been much worse for Epstein than for Hoffenberg. The latter claimed that it was his protege Epstein who had orchestrated the scam. In 1987, billionaire Leslie Wexner, founder and chairman of The Limited, you know what it is, in case you don't, though, a chain of women's clothing stores, became Epstein's only known client, giving him the rights to his famous townhouse for free in 2011. Why? Don't know. Years after they were supposed to have lost contact, as it turns out, Epstein soon began managing Wexner's finances, and his house, I guess. Wexner's associates never understood the hold Epstein had over their boss. Shortly after they began working together, Epstein moved into Wexner's Upper East Side home. "It's a strange relationship," commented a Wall Street trader who knows Epstein. "It's just unusual for someone that rich to suddenly give all his money to a stranger." In 1996, Epstein renamed his company the Financial Trust Company and relocated it to the island of St. Thomas, a tax haven in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Wexner's credibility made it plausible that Epstein was making billions from his Caribbean stronghold. And then that would at that point veer into the story we were warning you about and then filling you in a little bit about later on. That cannot happen without political connections in the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands very strongly democratic, very much a democratic stronghold politically. It's going to involve democratic politicians, and it did. Epstein bought 2 neighboring islands in the Caribbean. In 1998, he paid $7.95 million for Little St. James, a 30-hectare island on which he built that luxurious palace rigged with microphones and cameras, which is why I keep telling you that Pervalago is probably rigged with microphones and cameras, and why I warn you that the new ballroom at the White House, if it's ever built, will also be rigged with microphones and cameras. These guys did everything the same way. This, of course, rigged up with mics and cams like a CIA safe house, it says here. It wouldn't be a very safe house if that were the case, though. This is where he would organize his orgies, transporting his guests aboard the Lolita Express, which he acquired in 2003. In 2016, Epstein spent more than $20 million on Great St. James, a 65-hectare island, and which, by the way, just as a point of interest, was visible right out the window of the, Airbnb that we used when we spent a couple of days down in St. Thomas in June of this year for a family event. It was very interesting. It was no longer Epstein's Island, but that's what we were looking at right out the window. It was just kind of weird and surreal. Almost everyone has heard of him, but no one seems to know what he's up to. People said about him on Wall Street at the time, it's unusual for animals that big not to leave any footprints in the snow. Mathematician Eric Weinstein met him once and, gotta deal with the timer there, met him once and came to the conclusion that Epstein was a construction, something that is not human. And I guess maybe that's why it makes so much sense to illustrate this piece with so many AI conglomerate pictures. All right, that brings us to the end of that section. Coming up next, if we choose to continue with the story, and at this point we may want to break off from the story, but we're definitely going to break off for our break. But next up, in the wake of Robert Maxwell, some sort of will detail for us the connections of Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who no doubt had lots of connections just because of his status as a proto-billionaire back in the UK back in the day. All right, we got other directions we might want to go, though, but gives you some inkling of what's available in this article, this sprawling piece provided to us by Shambhala Jones. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. You know, the thing I wanted to jump to doesn't seem to be as long an article as it looked. A lot of it, a great deal of it is pictures. But I thought it might be an interesting companion piece to this, and might be time to jump over to it anyway, given that this piece looks like it continues on forever. Let me just scroll a little bit here and see. I mean, if we wanted to, would we be able to finish this thing? We might, if we really pushed it. So maybe we just do that, just in the interest of continuity, and get this thing out of the way. And it was said at the outset that this would be a lot easier to have read to you, perhaps, than to sit down and read. So the next piece up here the next section is In the Wake of Robert Maxwell. Let's read at least that and see how things go. Epstein's strategy of targeting high-level relationships, including in hostile countries, and navigating the murky waters of the intelligence services for personal gain, seems to have been copied from that of an illustrious predecessor, Robert Maxwell, father of his partner, Ghislaine. Robert Maxwell's career was in a way a pioneer of the Putin model. Interestingly enough, it says here in this extra text box, it involved the fusion of media power, sophisticated financial fraud, and the exploitation of links with state intelligence services for personal gain and protection. Hey, that's a good idea. Good racket. Maxwell was a master at manipulating the institutions of capitalism and intelligence and turning them against themselves. A Czech Jew, reduces him to, one tough talking point. A Czech Jew. Sounds like it's Hitler talking about him. He joined the resistance during the war, which would be only natural, I suppose. From that time on, as was common in the resistance, Robert Maxwell navigated between various intelligence services, British, Zionist, and Soviet. And let's not get excited about what Zionist means. In 1945, he was tasked by the British intelligence, it says the British intelligence, with interrogating captured German scientists, work probably carried out in collaboration with the Alsos mission, a branch of the American Manhattan Project that cooperated with British forces to collect and classify information on the German atomic weapons program. He began collecting German and Russian scientific and research documents unknown in the Anglo-Saxon world. He proposed a daring deal to the MI6 that they help him financed the purchase of a scientific publishing house. In return, the company would serve as cover for his activities, allowing him to travel, establish contacts with scientists around the world, including behind the Iron Curtain, and gather valuable intelligence for London. In 1951, with MI6 funding, he acquired Pergamon Press, a small publishing house, and signed a golden agreement with the Soviet Copyright Agency. I don't know this is, I guess, the acronym for it, VOU, so capital V, capital O, lowercase u. I guess OU is the second word in this, VOUAP. Later, the easier to understand anyway, if not pronounced, acronym VAAP, again, Soviet Copyright Agency. He began publishing English translations of Soviet academic journals. He transformed Pergamon into a global giant in scientific and technical publishing. This success brought him considerable wealth and stature. While MI6 appreciated his services, MI5, counterintelligence, harbored a deep and persistent mistrust of him. His Foreign Office file described him as a thoroughly bad character and almost certainly financed by Russia. In the 1950s, the FBI investigated his links with Moscow but concluded that there was no evidence that Maxwell was involved in acts of espionage. In 1964, he was elected Labour MP and held his seat until 1970. I don't think I knew that about him. I missed that part. Probably heard it and just forgot it. In 1968, he publicly defended the Soviet intervention in Czechoslovakia, being Czech, that's interesting, arguing that it was necessary to preserve security in Europe. He was rewarded with an invitation to Moscow from Brezhnev. Maxwell spoke to Brezhnev's heart. He loved cars and hunting, and he was a heavy drinker. After Brezhnev's death, Maxwell remained in contact with the new general secretaries, Andropov, and then, of course, Andropov dropped off, famous headline, Chernenko, and Gorbachev. He was allowed to enter the Soviet Union 6 times a year. He became the Kremlin's chief propagandist for the Soviet system abroad. That's a bad bet. According to Stanislav Lakarev, a KGB colonel, V.A. Kryuchkov. Wow. Okay, so according to this writer, Stanislav Lekarev, a KGB colonel by the name, I guess, of V.A. Kryuchkov, editor's note here, it says the head of the KGB, personally met him several times during Gorbachev's period. During these meetings, it was decided that Maxwell, in the interests of the KGB, would launch a magazine in London and also finance the operation of a film studio in Moscow, which would produce films based on KGB scripts. The KGB resident in the United States, General D. What's his name here? Yakushkin, also, quote, it says, worked with Maxwell. In June of 1991, General L. Shebarshin, editor's note, head of KGB's Foreign Intelligence Service, met with him in London. It is difficult to believe that all these KGB contacts had any illusions about Maxwell. After all, when such people cooperate with intelligence services, they work primarily for themselves. Despite this, several KGB chiefs received promotions and government awards for their contacts with Maxwell. In the late 1970s, Pergamon Press prospered thanks to the publication of such bestsellers as the works of Soviet leaders, 5 by Brezhnev, including a masterpiece by the title In the Name of Peace on Earth, 1 by Chernenko and 1 by Andropov, then head of the KGB. This abundant output was financed by Moscow. Maxwell contributed greatly to the Gorby mania that swept the West. Although KGB officers were wary of him because of his links with MI6, he's playing all sides here, the party appreciated him as an agent of influence. The Central Committee's Agitprop department generously financed Maxwell's services from public funds. All this bounty was welcome as clouds began to gather over the Maxwell empire. In 1969, a British Department of Trade and Industry investigation into his management of Pergamon Press revealed that he had artificially inflated Pergamon's share price through transactions with his private family companies. To protect himself, Maxwell implemented his strategy of using his wealth and media influence to gain access to world leaders, including those in the Eastern Bloc, the U.S., and Israel. To curry favor with dictators such as Nicolae Ceausescu, of Romania, and Todor Zhivkov in Bulgaria, he published flattering biographies about them. He had access to Ceausescu, much good did it do him, Honecker, Husak, and Kadar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of these guys' names right. Maxwell's chronic need for money, I don't understand. It seemed to be like rolling in money, and then they always need more money. But anyway, it led him to capitalize on his address book and the information obtained through his networks by selling it to secret services. His links with MI6, the KGB, and Mossad were not ideological. State secrets were a commodity intended to fill his abysmal financial deficits. And I guess maybe in some ways it should be expected that the intelligence services will be operating to keep you constantly in need of money so that you constantly need to cooperate with them in exchange for that money. Maxwell thought big, I guess. I don't know whether you can really count this as thinking big, but just stealing a lot of money. In the 1980s, he acquired the British Printing Corporation. Then in 1984, the Mirror Group newspapers, which published the Daily Mirror, among others. But in 1991, this unrepentant juggler was on his last legs. His naked body was found floating in the Atlantic Ocean off the Canary Islands, not far from his luxury yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. Accident, suicide, murder, the mystery remains. After his death on November 5th, 1991, it was discovered that he had plundered his own employees' pension funds. To fill the gaping holes in his finances and secure ever larger loans, Maxwell had embezzled approximately £460 million from the Mirror Group's pension funds and other companies. I guess that'll happen if you're just a habitual thief running a Ponzi scheme for yourself. The Sunday, very Trumpy, though. I'll say that. Except for the part about, unfortunately, his naked body was, maybe it is fortunate, but never found floating anywhere. So, the Sunday Express claims that a secret document signed by the head of the KGB just months before Maxwell's mysterious death showed that he was such a high-ranking asset for the Kremlin leadership that they had asked the KGB intelligence services to protect Maxwell's personal reputation and business activities. Next section finally comes along, dangerous liaisons. Shall we read more? Ghislaine was Robert Maxwell's favorite daughter, his emissary and confidant, deeply involved in his business affairs. The exact date of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's when they met for the first time is shrouded in mystery. Shortly after her father's death, fleeing scandal in the UK, Ghislaine Maxwell moved to New York. It was long believed that she met Jeffrey Epstein at a party in New York in the early 1990s. Their relationship was not love at first sight, but an immediate close partnership. A video from the NBC archives dated November 1992 provides the first irrefutable evidence of their association. It shows them together with Donald Trump at a party at Pervalago in Florida. Testimony from Epstein's staff confirms Ghislaine Maxwell's rapid rise. As early as 92, she was introduced as his main girlfriend. Ugh. Federal indictments attest that the criminal conspiracy to entice minors to travel to commit illegal sex acts began at least in 1994. Her friends say that at a party at Maxwell's house, you were just as likely to meet Russian call girls as Prince Andrew. Maxwell became the co-architect of a financial and criminal empire. The date when Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell met for the first time is crucial, though it's shrouded in mystery, but now it's crucial, as the question of Robert Maxwell's operational and other legacy is key. Stephen Hoffenberg offers a different timeline from the one commonly accepted. Here in his version, as reported by Vicky Ward, Hoffenberg told me that in the 1980s, after Epstein left Bear Stearns in disgrace, he was trained in offshore money transfers and knew one of his mentors, a British arms dealer who died in 2011, called Douglas Leese. And by the way, I didn't see it mentioned earlier that he had left Bear Stearns in disgrace. He left Bear Stearns and started his own company, would only accept clients worth $1 billion or more. Could it also have been the case that he left in disgrace and just, ignored that and told everybody that he was a genius, and the disgrace was that they were all just jealous of him. Sure, I guess that happens in this weird industry. Anyway, back to what Vicky Ward had said. Hoffenberg told me that Lease, the arms dealer, had played a crucial role in understanding Jeffrey's modus operandi, as he had introduced him not only to European aristocrats, whom Epstein later fleeced, but also to all kinds of people in the arms industry, including the late Saudi businessman Adnan Khashoggi. Yes, Khashoggi. And, it seems, the late media mogul Robert Maxwell. Hoffenberg told me that Epstein had said he had worked at several projects with Robert Maxwell, including resolving Maxwell's debt problems. Epstein also told Hoffenberg that through Maxwell and Lease, he was involved in something Hoffenberg described as national security issues, which he said involved blackmail, influence peddling, information trading at very serious and very dangerous level. Let me just also point out, Adnan Khashoggi, the Saudi businessman and arms dealer himself, was he either sold to Trump or bought from Trump, Trump's briefly owned mega yacht, the Trump Princess, right? So I'm just pointing that out. I think Khashoggi may even have had a Trump Tower condo at some point. I don't know what relationship, if any, there is between the branches of the family. If it's the same family that Jamal Khashoggi was part of, I'm not sure, but Adnan Khashoggi was a very notorious figure in his day. So, text box here. Oh, sorry, we didn't get to that yet. Hoffenberg's allegations regarding the date of the meeting between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were met with skepticism, but were confirmed during Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, if she actually told the truth there. The prosecution revealed that she had traveled on the New York millionaire's private jet as early as July of 1991, 4 months before her father's death. The theory of a business association between Robert Maxwell and Epstein in the 1980s is taken seriously, at least by Christopher Steele. Text box. So, Epstein knew Robert Maxwell when he was alive. Was he a protege and disciple of the British magnate? Don't know. Is that answered here? Did Maxwell want to make him his heir apparent, not actual inheritor of his estate, but heir apparent, by introducing him to his daughter in 1988? Or maybe it did mean inheriting his estate. As Hoffenberg and other sources claim, I think maybe heir apparent in terms of operating as between finance and intelligence worlds. The financial links between Epstein and Ghislaine's father were mentioned by Jean-Luc Brunel in conversations nearly 20 years ago. Jean-Luc told his acquaintances that Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, was one of the reasons why Jeffrey Epstein had money. He said that Maxwell had been one of Epstein's first investor clients and one of the Frenchman's former close associates. That's what one of Brunel's close associates told The Sun. There are many similarities in the MO of the two men. We need to try to untangle Maxwell's activities from 1988 onward in the USSR and Eastern Europe, because Epstein, with his genius for tax evasion and his virtuosity in offshore banking, must have been involved, given Brunel's testimony quoted above. This, of course, was the period when the communist regime was falling apart. The main concern of the apparatchiks who sensed the storm coming was to place the Communist Party's assets in a safe place. Oh well. Between 1989 and 1991, the KGB transferred to the West 8 tons of platinum, 60 tons of gold, truckloads of diamonds, and up to $50 billion in cash. The cash part was in rubles, an officially non-convertible currency, but the Soviets made it convertible by creating a vast network of shell holding companies across the West. Those responsible for transferring the money on the Russian side were Colonel Leonid Veselovsky, that's my best guess, Veselovsky, a KGB financial genius, seconded to the Central Committee's administrative department, and Nikolai Kruchina, head of that department. The KGB and its contacts abroad were called upon to help. The focal point of that transfer activity in the West was Maxwell, the midwife overseeing the birth pains of the so-called Soviet oligarchy, wrote Russian dissident Alexander Boot. All right. At this point, can we make it if we push on? I'm just sort of curious whether it's even possible. I guess maybe. But we can at least make it through the end of this section about Robert Maxwell. The collapse of the USSR was a blow to Maxwell, but he quickly realized that other opportunities arose in Eastern Europe. KGB Colonel Stanislav Lekarev, who died in 2010, by the way, details Maxwell's new activities. Maxwell cooperated, but he never forgot his own financial interests. He helped socialist countries set up joint ventures abroad, but not for free. $2 billion secretly paid up front by the Bulgarian government to launder drug money disappeared into Western banks. Maxwell offered bank accounts in Liechtenstein to senior Soviet Party officials in return for his services opening such accounts for KGB agents and Communist Party representatives. Maxwell received a commission. At MI5, this information was considered particularly valuable. In August of 1999, the New York Times revealed what could be the largest money laundering operation ever detected in the United States. Investigators suspected that an account opened at the Bank of New York had been used to launder money from the Russian mafia, as the collapse of the Russian financial system the previous year had accelerated capital flight. The amount involved was estimated at $10 billion, and the case led to Semyon Mogilevich, one of the big bosses of the Russian underworld, linked to the KGB, who was in turn, by the way, linked to various figures who worked for Donald Trump and Michael Cohen back in the day. And we talked about that in the course of the 2016 election, I think. Mogilevich was involved, of course, in arms trafficking, drug trafficking, prostitution, and investment fraud. Robert Maxwell had opened the door to the Western financial world for him in 1988. He obtained Israeli passports for the Godfather and 23 of his associates. Thanks to these passports and access to the account that Maxwell had set up at the Bank of New York, Mogilevich was able to expand his criminal network across Europe and into New York, of course. A reward of $5 million for information leading to the arrest of Semyon Mogilevich, convicted of wire fraud, conspiracy under the RICO Act, mail fraud, conspiracy to launder money, etc., is that's actually all part of the caption for Mogilevich's photo included in here. He's basically an enormous underworld figure. According to the testimony of defector Alexander Litvinenko, Mogilevich had maintained good relations with Putin since 1993 or 94, and that brings us to the end of this section and to the next one, the Empire of Kompromat. That, I think, is maybe where we'll jump off, and I would like to read a not unrelated article, I guess. I mean, it's meant to be unrelated, but I guess just in terms of, like, why are all these people so weird, brings us to this piece, which Scott shared with me a while back from the Wall Street Journal, although I have to read it in Instapaper format in order to get to it these days. Even though it was a gift link, they expire. The Wall Street Journal's very tight-fisted with those things, amazingly enough. But maybe you read it at the time. If you had a gift link or a subscription to the Wall Street Journal. The ultra-rich, again, with the ultra-rich. The ultra-rich are spending a fortune to live in extreme privacy, which I guess facilitates all of these kinds of weird dealings. Anyway, I just thought I would share this one with you. May or may not be related, or you may or may not see parallels in all of this. When developers Masood and Stephanie Shojaee, Shojaee, okay. When they dined out recently, just they went to a restaurant? No. They headed to the members-only section of Mila Restaurant in Miami Beach, where they were whisked to a table already bearing their favorite cocktails and chopsticks engraved with their names. On a business trip to Dubai last month, the Shojaees exited their Bombardier Global jet and later stepped into a waiting Maybach that zipped them to a lavish hotel. They went through a private entrance that bypassed the lobby and took an elevator straight up to the royal suite, where a staffer checked them in and presented their butler. For me, luxury in this era is defined as time-saving and efficiency and service, said Masood Shojeh, the 65-year-old chief executive of Shoma Group, a residential and commercial developer. The ultra-wealthy are wielding their growing fortunes to glide through a rarefied realm unencumbered by the inconveniences of ordinary life. They don't wait in lines. They don't jostle with airport crowds or idle unnecessarily in traffic. And I guess that all comes from, the access to private travel and private jets, but also it means you can move unseen. And that's why nobody seems to be able to detect you until it's too late, moving around with, I don't know, let's say 14-year-old masseuse in your entourage. Okay. Instead, an ecosystem of exclusive restaurants, clubs, resorts, and other service providers delivers them customized and exquisite experiences as fast as possible. The spaces they inhabit are often private, carefully curated, and populated by like-minded and similarly well-heeled peers. The acquisitive power of the very rich is soaring. The net worth held by the top 0.1% of households in the U.S. reached $23.3 trillion in the second quarter of this year, from $10.7 trillion a decade earlier, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. The amount held by the bottom 50% increased to $4.2 trillion from $900 billion over that period. So it increased, but not nearly by anywhere near as much. I guess that occurred to me, or this reminded me of the item we pointed out the other day about the people who you would consider to be ultra wealthy, but then who aren't, or who don't consider themselves to be ultra wealthy because they're only worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And after all, I think we're talking about the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, being worth $500 million or so, and yet still wanting to get an administration job as opposed to just jetting around the world enjoying his money at this point. But how that was twice the net worth of the guy that we thought was too rich to be the president in 2012, Mitt Romney, and that despite it all, being twice as rich as Mitt Romney, his entire net worth, Glenn Youngkin's, was what Jeff Bezos dropped on a boat. So I don't know. I guess that's what accounts for these kinds of soaring rates of the acquisitive power of the very rich. Now, back to the article here. The Miami area provides a window into this world. And guess what? That's exactly where they negotiated the supposed peace deal between the oligarchy of Russia and, there's an oligarchy in Ukraine as well, too. But the oligarch president here in the United States facilitated it, and his son-in-law and his daughter just happened to live, in this rarefied air. The Miami area provides a window into this world. Long a destination for wealthy elites from the Northeast, Europe, and Latin America, it has become an even stronger magnet for the affluent in recent years, fostered by pandemic-era migration and the region's emergence as a technology and finance hub. There's been an explosion of wealth creators, or wealth stealers, depending on how you look at it, said Patrick Dwyer, a managing editor at New Edge Wealth, a wealth management firm in Miami. They have enough money to live exactly how they want to live. You just create your own artificial reality bubble and live in it. A new service economy enables them to avoid everybody else if they want to, and this isn't even in their survival bunkers. In the Bentley Residences condo tower under construction in Sunny Isles Beach, who else has done a lot of construction projects in Sunny Isles Beach, known as Little Moscow or Moscow on the Intracoastal, and what are there, 7 Trump-named buildings on Sunny Isles Beach, where... By the way, just to throw a little immigration stuff in there, all of the Russian women go to have their babies there so that they can be American citizens. But Trump is totally pledging to put a stop to that, except not for them. Anyway, As we said, Bentley Residences condo tower on Sunny Isles Beach, north of Miami. Car elevators will deliver residents straight up to their homes and deposit vehicles in adjoining sky garages. I think I'd like to see a picture of the sky garage. Why would you even bother? Avoiding the need to deal with parking valets and reception areas. You don't even have to deal with a valet. Units whose prices start at about $6 million will each feature a private pool perched on an expansive terrace. The building's restaurant, available only to owners, will feature C-shaped booths arranged in a way to keep guests out of each other's view. I don't even want to look at other rich people. The ultimate luxury is privacy, said Gil Dazer, the 50-year-old president of Dazer Development, who patented the car lift and dubbed it the Dezervator. That's very funny. I kind of like that one. Okay, like the Wonkavator. Dazer knows from experience. Several years ago, he traveled to Belize aboard his Gulfstream jet and took a helicopter to a private island resort with only 7 villas. That's 6 too many, of course. Each of them set off from the others and equipped with its own plunge pool and dock. He spent his days lounging and swimming, occasionally ringing a butler to bring him a whiskey. And why not? I guess I would too. It feels like you have the place to yourself, Deezer said. I don't know why you don't just buy a place to yourself, but okay. Oh, there's a picture of the Sky Garage. Anyway, with his 50th birthday party earlier this year, Deezer hired artists including rapper Fat Joe and El Alfa to perform on the beach in front of his home, effectively turning a concert experience that is usually public into a private bash. Those who can afford it sometimes rent an entire facility to have exclusive use of it. At Centner Wellness, a high-end holistic healing center, oh boy, in Miami that offers a host of treatments employing the latest technology, rich clients occasionally book the whole place for several days, said founder Leila Centner. I guess maybe celebs don't want people to know what kind of treatments they're getting. One family of about 10 people did that a few months ago, she said, turning the 15,000 square foot center into their own wellness playground at a cost of $150,000. Each had a tailored experience from blood cleansing, to cell rejuvenation, to transcranial magnetic stimulation. How does a magnet even work? With plenty of pampering in between. You get the idea? There's a little bit more here we won't get to, but it's making me queasy actually reading you this stuff. Plus, it's time for me to go and help out with the cooking for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you and all who are listening, and to some who are not listening.
NetworksRadio.com.
You're allowed to whisper that to them.
You have been listening
But make them listen.
to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, maybe you want more to listen to. Well, your prayers are answered. The West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is next right here on Netroots Radio. Justice Putnam takes the wheel, starting off with his story with Stephen Miller. Had one of his unhinged screaming fits on Fox News again. Hooray! Aren't we all thankful for that? We'll have a new show for you tomorrow, and see you next week.